Ding dong dang, and we are live.
We're live. Apparently the fish cakes are a go from the Portnow household.
Oh, I don't know yet. We'll see as they join. So it literally. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
You carry on. So it's Austrian night. We've got Simon phoning in so he can hear via the phone. We've got people dialing in on Facebook and YouTube.
Our Austrian friends.
Yeah, it's an international interactive tasting evening.
Something or other.
Something like that. Hi, folks. Thursday evening.
Evening all. Nice and prompt. Love it. Love it.
Always glad to see. It's Gruner. Gruner Veltliner. So we went green. Yeah. We did think about the lederhosen, but mine just don't fit anymore. They just don't fit anymore.
I was going to have 10 Steins in front of me, actually.
10 Steins of Gruner Veltliner. Oh, how we would like to have a Stein of beer somewhere.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi,
nice to see you. Nice to see you. Okay, we have a multitude of people online already.
I'm just going to flash you my crab cakes.
So this is what they should look like.
So I'm going to hold things so they don't slide onto my keyboard. Ooh.
So for everybody who doesn't know, we're Hannibal Brown Wines, and we tend to sort of put a complimentary food proposition together. You can look online a few days beforehand. The recipe's there, and if the recipe's good, then your crab cakes will be fabulous. If there is a flaw in the recipe, and there could well be, then. But I think these look fabulous. And to be fair, we've already had one.
They were a little bit on the wet side, our crab cakes. But if you persist and give them a good, bear with the pattying process.
And what's the little sauce, Barry?
Well, that's a kind of lime chili mayo, which is just a really nice combination. So
somebody hears after one.
He's desperate. So quick intro, just in case we've got anybody new here right now. We are Hannibal Brown. My name's Jude.
And I'm Pam.
And this is Finn.
Finn was spotted today. He's a star.
Oh, is he?
He's a star, yes.
Headhunted.
Would you believe it? I was on a dog walk this morning, and I got a call from across the fields who said they saw Finn on the TV screen last night. So hopefully those dog walkers are listening this evening. We want a wave or a paw from Daisy.
But they didn't mention either of us. They just noticed Finn. Which is
exactly. Well,
kind of how dog walking
we
goes,
know our
isn't it?
place in this. We know our place.
Hi, Isabel. Hi, Sam. Hi, Claire. Nice to see everyone joining us. Welcome.
Nice to see you.
Austrian night.
Indeed.
Now, we thought about getting on our
green.
Our Austrian flag tops, as you'll see on the top of the bottles, but as the red and white stripes were a bit hard to come by because we're a bit more nautical. We always end up blue and white.
We could have worn our Hannibal Brown green shirts, actually.
Well, I think it's
a bit nippy this evening, to be fair.
Mix it up.
Nippy.
So we wanted to have a little bit of a shout about Austria because we love Austrian wine.
We do.
And like so many countries, it has had a speckled past. Speckled, more blotched, seriously stained.
Some of you will know why, and some of you may not know why. But it's a fascinating reason.
Yeah. It's all very interesting. There's a lot of history here.
In fact, we're a bit ahead of the game, actually. So if we start slurring our wines, if we start slurring our words, it's because we've already done a virtual tasting. We've done a virtual tasting this evening for a company. And we actually showcased some Gruners for them as well.
We did, but obviously we weren't drinking because it was way too early in the day and we were working. So we are here now, full attention.
Yeah.
Hello, Michelle. Glad to see that Tim and Emma have got their crab cakes on the go.
Well done.
It's a great combination. It works for both the wines. So I think without further ado,
what's the news? Hang on.
Oh, right, hang on.
The news.
Well,
we are promoting today a new wine from Sardinia.
Yes, yeah.
It's a brand new wine. It's called 64, and it's a Vermentino from Sardinia. Look it up on the website, hannibalbrown.com. Just plug in Vermentino or Sardinia, and it will come up.
Lovely it is too.
It is another great Italian grape variety that you don't really ever hear about. Remember, Italy produces the most wine in the world, so forget about Pinot Grigio, forget about Prosecco. There's thousands and thousands of lovely white and red wines that come from there that they're slightly obscure. You just don't get to hear about.
And especially Sardinia. Sardinia has real elegant wines coming from the island, and you don't see them very often because there's not a vast amount. But
so that's
worth
one,
looking at.
And it's got an offer on it. That's one.
Yeah, no major dog news this week, no disasters, glad to say.
No.
Couple of culinary successes. Definitely the new kind of Asian chicken noodle soup. Ooh, that is going to come up. I'm going to make some sort of canapé out of that and let you know what it is, because just delicious.
Yeah.
So we're going to start. We're going to start with the all-ram, okay? Yeah. So if everyone pours themselves a lovely glass of all-ram, if you've got it available to you.
My wine of the moment.
Pam's wine.
My wine of the moment. Oh, I've got some.
Right. Okay, well,
I've got some. We already pre-poured.
Well, you might have. So two Grüne Veltliners, two of the same grape variety. You think, well, why would you do two of the same? But these two wines are so very different to each other. And also Austria is so very focused on Grüne Veltliner. I mean, what's the percentage?
Well, important to say, first of all, the Grüne Veltliner is the name of the grape.
Yes, sorry, of course.
Austria produces everything that's produced in Austria. 70% of it is white, 30% is red. The majority of the white wine produced in Austria is Grüne Veltliner. Mm-hmm. And it has, as Jude says, had a little bit of a checkered past, but not in the last 20 years. Not the last 20 years, it's been phenomenal, and it's going up and up and up. And this is a country, this is one country that is just interested in focusing on quality over quantity. So the day was where you were getting bulk wine from Austria, and we'll talk about that. But these days, it's all about quality. That's what they're doing.
And that's why we love it so much, because it's so reliable. I mean, there is cheaper end of the scale still, but when you spend in the region of 12 to 18 pounds a bottle, or 15 to 20 pounds a bottle, you're getting absolute stunning wines and excellent value for money as a result. The two wines we've got this evening are both organic. The second one is also biodynamic, which we'll touch on again. And actually, I could just pop up the.
Let's have a mapper.
Pop up the map, and then we'll all know where we're talking about. So
that's Lebanon.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Looks like Crete. Oh, there we go. There's Austria. Austria.
That is little dinky Austria. The greyed out areas are regions which basically don't produce wine, and these two wines
produce chocolate. Oh, that's Switzerland.
I think, well, maybe they produce chocolate. I don't know. We're not versed in the other agricultural
fabulous
practices.
Cakes, baking.
But certainly in the yellow highlighted area, which is, it's called Lower Austria, this region, but it's actually further north than Upper Austria. So I don't know, maybe it's lower in altitude slightly. But basically sort of north and slightly west of Vienna is an area called Kamptal. And that is where these wines come from. And then there's a sort of the Kamptal River, there's a valley, and there's a lot of very good quality Grüne Veltliners produced in that area.
Yeah. So if you look closely, you'll see it. It is marked in that yellow bit, sort of to the west side of the yellow bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you got the other map?
Yeah. So now we're going to
hone in,
zoom in a sort of highly technical, smooth transition to this one, which I've very carefully circled and put an arrow on.
Those guys keep popping up?
Oh well, they're relevant in a moment. So this is that little Kamptal area, which is quite difficult to see, but where that arrow point is pointing is a little village called Strasse.
Yeah.
And that is where Allram are. Yeah. Now it's a family-owned vineyard. In fact, I'm going to
those two people that keep popping up.
Let's show you the two people. And the winery was recently handed down from the father to.
There they are.
There we go, to Michaela. Her surname Haas Allram, but Michaela on the right, and her husband Eric, who
it's not the other way around then.
I'm presuming. So Michaela and her daughter basically focus on the commercial side of the business, and Eric and his son focus on the winemaking, the kind of. Oops, here we are again. So really nice, family owned.
Hi, John Andrews. Hello, Jess. Nice to see you.
Hi, guys. Very nice setup. all about lovely, clean, organic production, minimal chemical intervention. As always, as Hannibal Brown, we bang on about, we like our wines nice and clean. And also, this is a small family-owned winery, and they do it well.
Yeah.
So Luke has already said he's had a sneaky peek at the Allram and loves it, which is great, because we do too. So I think we should say cheers, everybody.
Chin chin, chin chin.
Cheers, everybody. Happy
Cheers,
Thursday.
doggy.
Cheers,
Cheers,
big
doggy.
guy.
But you can have a little hickey.
Oh, he's a good boy.
No drink for you tonight.
He's a good boy. So Grüner Veltliner. Who's tried Grüner Veltliner before? That's what I'd be interested to know.
Well, that is interesting in actual fact. And this is very different. This is very different to, your average Sauvignon Blancs or whatever. And I keep banging on about swirling it in the glass and making sure that you take in air when you're sloshing it around your mouth, because that's when all the flavors really kind of just like explode in your mouth. And the nice thing about Gruner, and one of the reasons why it is a sommelier's dream, is it has this lovely, lovely texture to it, but it also has really good, vibrant freshness and acidity, which means that it will age for years and years and years. So this is a 2018. Yeah. It's a very young wine. But we went to a Grüner Veltliner tasting in January, and we were drinking 1995 vintage Grüner Veltliners. And I promise you, we had to keep looking at the label because we couldn't believe how fresh they were and vibrant. So these wines really designed to last. They really are.
And they develop, but without becoming too full. Like they remain fresh.
Yeah. And the lovely thing is that there's a lot of ripeness, there's a lot of expressions, lots and lots of stuff going on here, and there's only 12.5% alcohol. Bish bash bosh, you can drink lots.
What more could you want? And it's organic, so good for the brain cells.
But viscosity.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's got this it sticks to the sides of your mouth.
So when you see on a tasting note,
yes,
a wine which is going to have this sort of characteristic, or on the back of a label, what are the words that people should be looking out for if they like this style?
Texture, viscosity,
oily, maybe.
Oily
is kind of a good word.
Yeah. Oily. Some people, I noticed this recently. Some people use olive oil as a sort of, what do you call it? What's the word?
Analogy.
Yeah, analogy. Olive oil, and it's kind of true. It's just sort of like, it's not water. It's definitely not water. It's not cheap old Pinot Grigio Plonko with nothing in it. It's got depth. It's got a bit of weight to it, and that is the majority of Grüner Veltliner is not oaked, but that's not to say that some producers don't use a little bit of oak. This has not had any oak in it, but it is aged on its lees, and its lees is basically all the bits and bobs, really, the post-fermentation stuff. So the lees is made up of, spent yeasts, which basically all the impurities, but all together, if it's aged on it, if it's matured with those lees still in the juice, then it just takes on just a bit more character and just, So rather than having it filtered out, you're not filtering out flavor. You're just kind of enhancing it.
So you'll often see on labels, like a real classic example is Muscadet sur Lie.
Cheers, Kirsten.
So Muscadet sur Lie is Muscadet on its lees.
Yeah,
and you might see on the label written in English, lees aged, or and it just means that it's most likely going to be a slightly bigger, rounder, fuller wine.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks. I've been here a while now. I've kind of figured it out. But I personally, if I see that on the label, I think, oh, yes, I'm up for that. Because I like that little bit of extra richness, especially in a white wine.
Yeah.
But it's nice and dry and fresh.
Yeah.
Which I think Michelle pointed out, very light and clean. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so popular. And I think that's why it goes so well with this crab cake that I'm going to eat.
Let's have a crab cake.
I'm going to eat whilst Pam talks to you.
Yeah. So a sommelier's dream is what Grüner Veltliner is. And again, one of the reasons why a sommelier's dream is because it sits so well with so many different types of food. It's delicious on its own, to be honest. And when we go on to the next one, it'd be a nice contrast, actually. It's just two different producers producing the same grape variety. But it takes up flavor so nicely. You know, you can go into a restaurant, go into a fancy pants restaurant and find a little chap, you know, a sommelier in a little dicky tie, and you say, have you got any Gruner? And you'll see his eyes light up, because they're just a joy, and they're just, you know, there's a little bit of sophistication to them, but they're incredibly elegant. Love them, love them, love them, love them.
Sam's made a good point that actually it often features on Saturday Kitchen Live. Which
Saturday Kitchen Live.
So it's got a bit of a cult following. It's slightly, you know, you've got to be slightly in the know, but it is just a fantastic food pairing wine.
Yeah, because bear in mind, I mean, Austria is not a huge country, and these days they really don't produce an awful lot. They have got a lot of producers. I don't know how many. I
actually do. Yeah.
Jude knows how many.
Off the top of my head, just roughly
hundreds.
It's hundreds, but it's not a huge number. I'll get there at some point. I'll let you know before the end of this evening.
And of course, you know, because of Austria being Austria, it's quite expensive to produce these wines. Bear in mind that the majority of vines are they're grown on very steep slopes. So, you know, you can't get a tractor up most of these slopes. So it's all being hand harvested. So it's very labor intensive. And then, of course, you've got the transportation, and everybody knows what it's like, you know, trying to get past these mountains when you're going skiing. It takes hours and hours and hours to go like 20 miles. Very tedious. It's the same for any wine that's trying to get out of there. They've got to go round and round. So it's expensive. It's expensive. Mm-hmm. But there was a time when the old Austrians were producing a rather lot of wine.
Cheapo Plonko.
Cheapo Plonko.
Let's give people a quick starter for 10 to be thinking about and answering.
Let's do it.
So we've alluded to the checkered past. And obviously we're all way too young to remember this. But you might have heard on the grapevine a particular sorry.
Worst pun ever.
A particular additive, let's say, that was used not legally, and which gave Austrian wine a really bad name.
Yeah.
Put it out there. Does anybody remember what that might have been? And just think about it. Put your messages on the comments, and
as soon as it comes up, we'll let you know.
We'll let you know. Yeah, but Austria has produced wine for as long as any other European country almost, but it's only really in the last 30, 40 years that it's upped its game. Not even 30
slightly
maybe
less,
that it's really upped its game and gone up this quality route. But it was exporting an awful lot of cheapo wine to neighbors.
So whilst you're still thinking about that, just a point about actually how you're comparing the wine with the food. So remember, just going back to basics, there are some fundamentals about how you complement wine with food. So if you've got a wine that's got sort of decent acidity in it, then you want to get decent acidity in the food. Mm-hmm. The two of them come together and basically harmonize, and you get a perfect combination. Mm-hmm. These are crab cakes. So is there acidity in crab?
Not crab itself, no. There's a bit of lime juice in there.
There's lime juice in there, which is quite prominent actually. Mm-hmm. And that lime juice is picking up the acidity in the wine. And there's also a little bit of chili in there.
Yeah, and especially in the dip.
Which lifts the crab cakes, and it also lifts the wine. Mm-hmm. I like it.
Yeah, the combo is nice. Gruner Veltliner is always known to work really well with Asian-y flavors as well. Yeah. And a little bit of spice.
Because Gruner Veltliner's got a little bit of spice in the grape variety. It's kind of like, it's got a bitterness. It's got if you think of green peppers, it has that kind of slight sort of like overtone to it. And also at the very end, when you've tasted it and you drunk it, it leaves with just a tad of bitterness on the back end of the palate. That is Gruner Veltliner. That's what it's all about.
Often kind of likened to the sort of almondy or
doggy.
Just having a paw. I think Finn just sorry, buddy.
Paw.
Like distraction over. Don't forget about the dog. He's like the star of the show.
But has anybody said it yet?
Quite a few people have come up trumps here. Essentially, antifreeze. It was diethylene glycol is the component which is found in antifreeze, which is what they were using.
Yeah. Naughty people.
Actually, Patrick sort of bang on there. Hello,
Patrick.
It gives hi, Patrick. By the way, it gives a sweetness and a richness and a viscosity.
Yeah.
But it's antifreeze.
Yeah. And it was really, really naughty. I'll just tell you a little bit about it, actually, because it's kind of interesting. Why it happened was kind of what I wanted to know. Why did they do this? And so it happened in 1985. And in 1985, some wineries were discovered that were actually, the wine contained this nasty antifreeze. And it wasn't in small volumes. Actually, it was in quite significant quantities in certain wines. And the question was, why were they doing this? And what had happened imagine, Austria is a little bit like the UK. You don't get very good, consistent growing seasons. So, from one year to the next, it could be a good year, lovely sunshine, what have you. And the next year it could be bad. And it was around about 1982 where Austria had the most horrendous growing season and basically produced next to nothing. Now, their biggest customer at the time was Germany, but in massive bulk. And the Germans were taking a huge amount of the Austrian wines to shore up their own German sort of wine supplies. And also bear in mind, in the 1980s, people were still drinking lots of sweet wine. They were enjoying wine. They wanted really sweet, almost like pudding wines. And so Austria couldn't fulfill their obligation to Germany. And that's when it all started, that they discovered that actually, if they took their rather sort of inferior quality wine that didn't have the sweetness because the grapes hadn't ripened and this, that, and the other, they discovered if they popped a little bit of antifreeze in it,
or diethylene glycol,
then it increased the sweetness, but it also increased the weight of the wine. And actually, to the majority of the consumers didn't notice the difference. They were seeing these fabulous wines come onto the market, which to all intents and purpose were exactly what they wanted. They had the right fruit, they had the right sweetness, and they had the right weight. Until some bright spark realized that actually this was impossible, because they knew that the previous vintages, they hadn't managed to produce these wines. So that's when it started sort of raising questions. And anyway, the culprits were discovered. A lot of people went to prison as a result of it. But interestingly, it suggested that actually a normal winemaker, even with all his sort of biochemical background, wouldn't necessarily have the nous or the wherewithal to realize that if you added antifreeze, I'll call it this real name,
diethylene
glycol, basic glycol, wouldn't necessarily have the nous to add this. And so the rumor is, or the suggestion is, that actually it was inside job from maybe scientists working specifically for the German supermarkets.
Controversial. You heard it here first.
A little bit controversial. But anyway, so the result was that Austria was in the press big time. Their whole wine industry collapsed overnight. And but they took steps, and their first step was they were going to move away from the bulk market, and their Austrian focus right now, from there on inwards, was to just focus on quality. So it took about 10, 15 years for them to sort of, get over this. And now you see what sort of fabulous wines they're producing.
Unsurprising.
So it's kind of like amazing. But this thing, just to make a point, actually.
Yeah.
So the suggestion is that 3 milligrams per liter is toxic to the human of this glycol going in. And a lot of it was seen to have like 5-6 milligrams, so twice the amount. But there were some that were discovered with 45 milligrams. Now that is, that's death.
That's gut rot.
Yeah.
But there were no deaths recorded, were there? It was
no.
That they know of, I suppose.
That they know of.
I actually once accidentally, in the back of my sister's car, we were at the beach after a very unusually hot camping trip, and I accidentally drank her antifreeze. Reached in and I was like, "Can I have some of this?" And as I was sipping away, she was like, "No." And it is quite sweet, but pretty awful. Yeah, it is. Not recommended.
It is. But then also, just to finish off, actually, so they had. Eventually, there was the problem with what were they going to do with all this quantity of wine that couldn't go onto the market. And we're talking about millions and millions and millions of litres. And they couldn't just pour it down the sink because this was toxic to water.
I wonder whether we should ask people what they think might have happened to it.
Oh, yeah. Has anybody got any suggestions what you might well do?
Yeah, with basically millions and millions of litres, if not gallons, of liquid.
Toxic wine.
Toxic liquid.
What would you do with it?
Because it's a tricky one. You can't flush it down the sink. You can't put it in the oceans.
No. I suspect some of it was drunk. But the majority
some of it, yeah. Well, we'll leave it. We'll think about that and we'll let you know.
Anyway, there's a nice story about Austria. But that was 1985.
Yeah. And here we are today, and the industry is thriving. Austria is still quite small. They produce only around 1% of the entire world wine production. And I've got quite an interesting comparison just to put it into perspective.
Yeah.
Because we've said before that France, Spain, and Italy produce 65% of all the wine in the entire world.
Yeah.
So these guys are producing 1%, which actually in bottles is roughly, well, actually I've got it in cases, roughly 28 million cases a year.
Okay.
So 28 million cases.
28 million cases. The UK produces 6 million bottles,
which is small.
Yeah.
So, and one I always like to go back to from a comparative kind of is Gallo. So
Gallo,
as a producer, we've all heard
Gallo.
of Gallo. We've probably all drunk it. You know, we've got a bottle of 2008 Gallo Rosé.
It's orange, but it's not orange.
Rotting in the shed.
It's not orange wine.
No, it's maybe we should do with it what was done with all that Gruner. So actually, Gallo produce in the region of 1 billion bottles of wine a year, which actually puts them on the map at a percentage of entire world wine production, like 3% or something is huge. So, you know, Austria is an entire country just producing 28 million cases. It's small, you know, but they're doing it very well.
What does it French produce? 6 billion cases? 6 billion litres. Billion. Huge.
So when you're talking volumes this big, it's really difficult to get your head around. But Austria is small and they do it very carefully. Yeah. So Lou suggested cleaning products.
Well, possibly,
You know, possibly put it in your car. Actually, that would have been a brilliant little money spinner if they managed to make something that runs on a combination of white wine and antifreeze. But none of the above. However, you're kind of on the right lines. So I just wanted to go back to the most commonly
Shall I tell them?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to tell them?
Well, actually, because you're not going to get it. It's crazy, but it makes sense. They used it to make cement. So basically, rather than using sort of, you know, some form of like water or something, they used it to make cement. And that's where it went. Millions and millions and millions of litres. That's how it went.
So there are houses all over Austria which are
made of wine,
built on dodgy old
made of wine. That's why they're all wooden huts.
perhaps.
I should call them huts.
So Grüne Veltliner is the widest growing grape in Austria, and definitely the widest growing white grape.
Yeah,
but it's 50% of all white wine is Grüne Veltliner. Next in line is a grape called Welsh Riesling.
It's not from Wales.
And it's not Riesling. So that's confusing. And it's not from India. Welsh Riesling is the second. And you don't see it very often. I think it is an indigenous grape to Austria, pretty much, or Germany, as they all came from. And then the next one down on the white grape variety is Weißer Riesling, which is Riesling.
Yeah.
So as with all of these countries, they decide to give slightly different names to the same grape varieties, which makes it incredibly difficult to follow.
But we're not going to get hung up about that.
No. Most important thing is Grüne Veltliner from this lower Austria area, which is sort of higher Austria, if you look at it on the map. That is where you get your really good quality Grüne Veltliner.
And what is the reference? What is the Grüne relevance? What's the reference? Why is it called Grüne?
So Grüne, green, Veltliner,
land, fields.
So green fields.
That's it. That's it. It is not a reference to the colour of the wine.
No, as you can see in your glass. Now, I think it's quite a good point to pour the Arndorfer and look
Compare
at the
and
difference.
contrast. If you've got two glasses, everybody, and we're paupers, we've only got two. She broke another glass this week.
Yeah, we're going to be on plastic next week without question. It will be on beakers before lockdown's out.
But do compare and contrast.
So Arndorfer, the Arndorfer is biodynamically produced. Okay, so very, very natural. Let's put up a picture of Martin and Anna Arndorfer, so you can compare them to the other beautiful winemakers.
The lovely,
they're all
beautiful
winemakers.
People. And here we go.
They're all
Martin?
beautiful people in
Where's
Austria.
Martin?
Here they are. This is a really nice picture.
There.
So these guys, they're salt of the earth.
They're bonkers.
Anna's father is one of the most respected winemakers in Austria, historically. And they both come from really good winemaking stock, but they wanted to go down the really natural route. So they have produced this wine biodynamically.
Hang on, I've got to go and get Doggy something. Where's this? Oh, look.
Oh, we run out of biscuits.
All right, I'll be back in a second.
Slaves.
Stay there, Doggy.
Slaves. So you can see from the colour of this wine immediately that it's a bit deeper in colour. It's 1 year older. I mean, it's not an old wine. It's 2017, but it tastes as fresh as the day it was made, which is the beauty. Of course, dog biscuits flying all over the place here. So it's a little bit older. It's produced in a different way in that it's biodynamic. It also has had a bit more oxygen, so it's kind of slightly more oxidized, much richer. Again, spent a lot of time on its lees and totally different.
Yeah.
So give it a good swirl.
Did you say something about the colour?
Yeah. So just give it a really good swirl and a really good sniff, and then taste it.
So when we met Martin Arndorfer, he didn't look like that. He had a beard. He looked proper beardy weirdy. And he's kind of a crazy guy, actually. Lovely, lovely, down-to-earth, naturalist. Naturalist. Oh, I always get confused. He does not take his clothes off.
He was wearing clothes.
He does the other one.
So rich, almost slightly honeyed.
Buttery on the nose, honeyed on the nose. Yeah.
Really quite a big wine.
Yeah.
But it's from basically round the corner from Oran. So it goes to show what a difference winemaking can make. Yeah. The different ways that you choose to make a wine.
Yeah.
Regardless of the fruit in the first place.
Which is why we should never get hung up about grape varieties. It's down to the producer. I mean, these two literally could be, like next door neighbors almost. And it's just how they're... Bless you, Simon. And it's just how they manipulate the grape varieties. Yeah.
So goes back to spending time on the lees.
Lees.
Of course, very important.
Lots of lees activity here.
But we should sort of maybe touch on biodynamics again very briefly. I found a really good statement, actually, which I'm going to read to you, because there are volumes and volumes written on biodynamic farming. And it has to be said, actually, the biodynamic movement. So it's all about
very simple terms, Chicky.
Yeah, it's all about the looking at the whole system. So from the planets down to the soil and everything in between.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to read you this statement.
It's a different farming method.
This is a really good statement. So the concept behind biodynamics is that everything in the universe is interconnected, and it gives off a resonance or vibe. The interconnectivity of everything even includes celestial bodies like the moon, planet, and stars. And that's where you have to say, hang on, it's not as weird as it sounds. So biodynamic viticulture is the practice of balancing the resonance between vine, man, earth, and stars. So essentially, it's a holistic view of agriculture. And I think that's a really good kind of summary statement. Yeah. Essentially, you feed the ground and make the ground healthy so it can support really good vines and give them the best opportunity to draw what they need to from the sun and do various things at different points of the where the moon is in its cycle.
That's right.
It sounds quite weird and quite airy-fairy, but it produces very clean, naturally produced wines that actually are usually quite interesting in character.
And to be fair, biodynamic principles have been followed for hundreds and hundreds of years. They just were never really, nothing was ever written down.
Correct, yeah.
Nothing was ever written down. Most people follow a different farming principle, which is by the sun. And this one is biodynamic is according to the moon. It's not to say it's wrong or right, it's just a different form of farming.
And very, very natural.
Yeah.
And the aim is to leave the land in a better state once you've harvested than when you started.
Yeah.
So actually, in that sense, it's kind of a more holistic approach, which I think is really fab.
Yeah.
But it does usually tend to mean lower volumes are produced because it's quite a faff, to be fair.
Yeah.
And the guy who started the biodynamic wine movement is a chappie that most of us probably know, and he's called Rudolf Steiner, an Austrian philosopher. Back in the day, was in the 30s. He started the Steiner schools.
In 20s, yeah.
Yeah, so quite a well-known chap, and he was really responsible for the start of the biodynamic wine movement, which links in nicely to Austria. Yeah. So there you go. Although Austria is not necessarily the home of biodynamic wine.
No, but it's quite interesting. I'm sure most people who are listening to this have probably gone into a vineyard, and the difference with biodynamic vineyards is when you go into a biodynamic vineyard, 9 times out of 10 it is completely overgrown, totally overgrown, because these vines, then they're not being tilled, the soil's not being tilled, it's being left to find its own natural pH, its own harmony. I remember going into a vineyard with a biodynamic winemaker, and all he was doing was planting wild flowers. So all he was doing was just planting little wild flowers in between the vineyard, in between the vines. That was it. And then it's just left. It looks like it's an overgrown, complete and utter mess, but actually it's the most natural farming that you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. So lovely, really.
Yeah. So if you get an opportunity to go to Austria, there are a lot of biodynamic winemakers in Austria. There's a lot of biodynamic winemakers in France and Spain as well. But go and look at comparative vineyards. So the lovely vineyards where the vines are in beautiful sort of lines,
and you're Burgundian,
clean, and they've got roses at the end and all sort of absolutely pristine. And then you've got your biodynamic ones next door, which are all overgrown and all over the place. It's just two different attitudes to producing wine.
Yeah, so the country garden versus a sort of wild.
Well, there's something in that though, because actually I know that I don't know whether George is on this call, but we know these days that they're encouraging all of us to not cut our grass as regularly as we used to. So I know we all love pristine, nice green lawns and what have you, beautifully cut with the lines in it and what have you. But actually, they're encouraging you to leave them because it's attracting
bees.
more wildlife, it's attracting more bees, and it's just better for the soil at the end of the day. And everywhere where we go and walk, Finn, the dog, is all completely overgrown. It's left, and the grass is up to here these days. He loves it. He's going to get ticks one hell of a lot, all sorts of ticks, but we won't talk about it.
No, we don't need to go. On ticks, I'm going to take over. So, okay.
I want to know what people think.
Well, we very much talked about the Gruners, but obviously Austria actually does produce some really fabulous red wines as well. Now, I want to put it out there. Can anybody name some of there's not very many which you will have heard of, but can anyone name any Austrian red grapes or red grapes that thrive in Austria? Or red grapes that you think might thrive in Austria because of the climate? Because then you can then just hazard a guess.
Oh, that's a tricky one.
It is tricky.
She's tough. I
know, but it's interesting. And, people do know. These people know what they're talking about.
But I also want to know if anybody has a preference to one versus the other. We should, at this point, tell them how much they are.
Yeah, I can tell you right now.
The first one.
So the Oram is $15.25 currently, because it's on an offer. And then the Arndorfer is a bit more expensive at $19.50. Okay, so totally different.
Yeah.
But I think they're both really good value for money.
But forget about the price. Forget about the price. Just decide which one. If you have a preference or you like both of them, and I like both of them because they're just totally different.
Yeah, tell us Arndorfer or Allram, because it'd be really interesting to know, because this is kind of gauging people's.
I can't see what's that last one.
So Susan Gregory, bang on. Blaufränkisch is definitely
very good.
Second biggest red grape variety.
Very good.
Chardonnay Chardonnay does feature in the top 7
It's
whites.
not red though.
It's not red.
Steigelt. Tim Carter, that's a schoolboy error. Chardonnay is a white grape
sorry,
variety.
I was asking red. So Chardonnay was about 7th in the white grapes, so it's quite low down. But yeah, Zweigelt is the most planted and produced, followed by Blaufränkisch.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh, hello.
We've got a pouring dog. Has he not had his dinner?
He's very demanding tonight.
I'm sure he's had his dinner.
Yeah.
Blaufränkisch is a grape that you've never heard of, but is better known probably in Hungary. It's the main grape variety in their very famous bull's blood.
Bull's
wine.
blood. We've all heard of bull's blood.
So it's a big grape variety, but you don't see it very often, and it's known under all sorts of other names, but only really in these kind of Central European, Eastern countries. So these are they're not noble grape varieties that you've seen in big famous regions in France.
No.
And they've not been exported and grown in many places in the world.
To be fair, bull's blood was hugely successful in the 80s, in the 80s, 70s, 80s. And then it kind of lost its way. And I think actually nothing more than they just lost shelf space because the Aussies came along, the Americans came along, everybody came along. And I think that Hungarians they just got squeezed out.
Sidelined a bit. But I think they're coming back. And actually maybe we should do a bit of exploring. I
don't know whether they still call it bull's blood, do they?
No, but I think we've tasted some really fantastic whites actually from Hungary. So maybe we'll have a little search and we'll do a little Hungry Thursday session in the future. Because actually it's got to be said right now. On Sunday coming up, we have our
Rosé Part 2.
Rosé Part 2.
Rosé Part 2, and the sun is going to shine.
Indeed. And due to the popularity of Rosé Part 1, we thought we'd talk a little bit more, and we're going to be tasting our Moroccan rosé all together.
There is so much to talk about rosé. I even heard Jancis Robinson talking about rosé this week. Oh,
she's
there's so much to talk
celebrity master of wine.
If you don't know who Jancis Robinson is, well,
you don't need to really. But she's very well known within the wine industry and as a sort of consumer-facing person, because she was the first master of wine who wasn't from the trade, I think.
Female.
Yeah. So anyway, Sunday rosé part 2. Then Thursday next week is all about volcanic wines.
Yes.
So we've got our white from the Canary Islands.
Yeah.
And the red is a Pompeiano Rosso, which is the grape is Aglianico. And as it sounds, is from the foothills of Mount Vesuvius.
Yeah.
Two really interesting wines.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about what the relevance of volcanic is in the whole in the whole procedure, if you like, and what the end result is.
Yeah.
Both really good. If you wanted to bring a different rosé on Sunday, by all means. I noticed Tim just mentioned they've got their Chateau d'Olière.
Oh yeah,
stunning.
It's the only one.
So
it's the only one.
We're tasting Zuina because it's kind of interesting. It's from one of our unusual origins, and
Morocco.
Hannibal Brown is all about exploring wines from slightly more unusual origins or slightly different wines from the places that you know of. So.
Yeah. By all means, crack open your Chateau d'Olière, but we're going to be opening Zuina from Morocco. Again, check it out. It's the Moroccan rosé on the Hannibal Brown website.
Lovely and dry, nice and fresh.
And then after that?
Then the following Sunday.
Sweetie Sunday.
Sweetie Sunday.
Now, Sweetie Sunday is going to be interesting because we're going to talk a little bit about, well, obviously about sweet wines, but we're also going to talk about how do you make a sweet wine? Because bear in mind, when you ferment the sugar until the sugar's dry, converts to alcohol, and then you've got wine. So where does the sweetness come from?
And what does it go well with? Yeah. And actually busting a few barriers, because people think sweet wine's scary, 70s table wine, but we're talking dessert wines here, really. Yeah. But some of these go really well with savory dishes as well. So the late harvest Riesling that we're going to be tasting, we'll be suggesting with goat's cheese because we're not particularly sweet.
So I'm going to ask Jude, which one do you prefer?
For me, it's the Arndorfer. I love it because I like that slightly more oxidized richness. For you?
Well, I did say that Olrum was my wine at the moment, and I'm loving the Olrum. Loving the Olrum. I think the Olrum without food is just sensational. I think this really with the crab cakes is fantastic. Yeah. So they're very different. They're very different. I mean, obviously there's a bit of a price tag difference, but let's be honest about this. We can't get the pub, we can't go to restaurants.
No, exactly.
So we're saving ourselves a fortune so we can drink better wine.
Yeah, and just indulge in it. So so yes. Do get involved on Sunday.
Any other preferences? Do anybody have a preference?
A few, but actually, I think people are kind of happy with both, to be honest with you. Which is great. The all-round is slightly less unusual and therefore probably a bit more popular. But hey, as we've always said, there's no one wine which is suitable for everyone. Otherwise, we would only need to list one wine, which would be really dull, but very easy.
So, Jude, what's your wine of the week?
Wine of the week. Well, I might be slightly revisiting our Jacques Brouwer Blanc de Blanc South African Sparkling 2011 vintage.
Now, we showcased this a couple of weeks ago, actually, in fact, last week. So it
was our Sparkling Sunday, yeah.
Made in exactly the same way as champagne, but it's from South Africa and it's half the price.
$17.99.
Half the price.
Really bargain.
Put your Verve Clicquots away at 35 quid. They can stick that.
Support the South Africans who need our help. And what about you? What's your wine at the moment?
Well, all I know it's because it's come right back into store. Into stock. It's the Lluvia, Adara Lluvia, double L U
I don't think it's Welsh.
IA. It's a Spanish white, and it's literally just come back into stock. It's been out for a few weeks. Look it up, Adara Lluvia. I love it. It
is very nice. It's a Sauvignon Blanc Verdeco, I think, blend.
Needy today.
Excuse me.
What's that?
Oh, excuse me.
We were hoping Daisy was going to say hello to her. I don't think Daisy's there.
Look, I'm really glad. All-round seems to be the winner for this evening. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on our little Austrian indulgence.
Yeah.
Hope that's been a little insight into Grüne Veltliner, and we'll encourage you to try and taste more. The reds from Austria are good as well. We only have one Zweigelt, and we're still on the hunt for a really, really good quality value combo on the red front, but we'll let you know as soon as we're there.
Yeah. So your job is to share. Please.
Yeah, get more people along to our tastings. We want more people getting involved and trying wines that they wouldn't try normally and enjoying the fact that they would have been at the pub buying 3 pints, but instead they've got a delicious wine that they would never have thought about buying in the first place.
Also, just a quick shout out. Also, anybody who's buying regularly off us, think about our subscription, which is incredibly flexible. Just give us a shout or go into the website and look up subscriptions. Oh, the wine, sorry.
Explorers
Wine Club. That's what it's called. And then, of course, Father's Day.
Yes.
Don't let him down. Do not let him down. He'll never forgive you.
How about a bottle of your favourite new Grüne Veltliner with a picture of your dad or you as a baby.
Or your dog.
And a few words just to say Happy Father's Day.
Yeah.
It's all doable. Give us a shout. You know where to find us. You know where to find the wines for the next few tastings. Give us a shout if you want some inspiration, if you've got a particular wine that you've really enjoyed, and we could suggest some others which are similar to it for you to try, because we may as well all be doing a bit of wine exploring as we can't do an awful lot of other exploring.
Absolutely. And just as I said at the very beginning, we've just come off a call with a business who've done their own virtual tasting through Zoom. We had 15 people on the call. Anybody else who's got a company out there or a bunch of friends that you want to do a Zoom tasting with everybody, we send the wine out to each household ahead of the events, and then we just basically crack on in and
have a fun tasting.
Yeah. So it's about an hour and 15 minutes or so. And if not, our DIY tasting kits.
Yeah, indeed. You can host your own tasting.
Yeah, you don't need us. You don't need us.
No, we've done it for you by that point. Emma was asking when the next double red night is. It's a good question. For the volcanic, it's one red
and one white.
Yeah, and we have Bordeaux Sunday.
Oh, we got Bordeaux.
We have a Bordeaux Sunday coming up. If you look at the website, you'll see it on there.
Yeah.
Which we've got our new really nice Saint-Emilion, easy drinking, lovely new edition.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll add another slightly more expensive one to that, so people can choose both if they want.
Send in your suggestions if you want us to talk about something specific. Then we will just give us a shout.
Exactly. So thank you for joining us, everyone.
Nice
see you on
see
Sunday,
you
Rosé Pâte, and have a lovely weekend.
Cheers. Cheers, chin. Cheers, Simon.
Bye, Simon.
Bye. Bye.